Thank you, Artem, for that very nice introduction, and welcome to this webinar. Now it's going to be in English, but you can see there is a Russian and Belarusian flavor to it as well. So we have Anna on hand to translate any terms or concepts that you don't understand. Please ask any questions in the chat, and we will, of course, answer them. You can ask questions in English or in Russian. You can practice your English or practice your Russian as well, and we'll be happy to answer them. We are making a recording, so we will send you the link for that recording after the session. So let me turn off my video for a moment because I'm going to show you a presentation, and then so hopefully you can all see this. We're going to talk about emotional intelligence today, and especially in business, and how it can improve your business in 5 different ways. Now, I would like to say, yeah, thank you for everyone for attending as well, and also, of course, to Artem from the Business Club for hosting us today. And we are asking for some participation as well, so we are going to ask questions to you. Sorry for that, but it will keep you awake as well. And do answer them in the chat. And again, you can write in English or Russian. So we're going to look at what is emotional intelligence, first of all, and then give you some specific and practical examples that everyone can use in the workplace and in your life as well, actually. It doesn't matter if you're a company with 1 person or 10,000 people, you can use these skills as well. And in my background, well, emotional intelligence helped me many years ago. I started teaching, and it helped me get up the ladder to work at schools with foreign students at Harrow and at Haileybury and at many other schools as well. And then it helped me to in my day-to-day running of the educational consultancy as well at Newton Bright. And what I realized was that this emotional intelligence you could also use in business as well. So that was back in 2005. I made this discovery that we can use these principles in business as well, and they help with negotiation, with gaining the trust of your team, with getting the respect of people you're trying to work with, and increasing the wealth within your company as well. We've worked with some of the most successful and wealthiest people in the world. And really, it feels like you have this kind of superpower, because although I didn't have any educational training in this area, in emotional intelligence, before I started, I realized that we shared many of those values. And since then, we've negotiated with lots of top schools in the UK, but also on the business side, which we're going to focus on today, with different billionaires and CEOs and top managers from many of the world's, particularly in Russia and the UK, banks such as Alpha Capital and Sberbank, with Lukoil, Rusal, Barclays in the UK, with Polius, and all host of individuals as well. It has really helped us with, we work with ambassadors, with top politicians, with top fashion houses, famous singers, famous actors and actresses, with footballers, with tennis players, and really in this negotiation has really helped with that. So let's look at what emotional intelligence is. And it's 5 main concepts you can see on the screen. Now, really, we could talk about one of these concepts for 5 hours, but to make it shorter, we're going to give you a brief overview of these 5 different areas and look at how they can help within business. So briefly, the 5 areas are self-perception. Self-perception is understanding yourself. Do you understand your own emotions? Do you understand why you feel in a certain way? And are you ambitious at work? Self-expression, the second one, is how well you express those emotions to other people. Are you assertive? Are you an independent thinker? Or do you just do what other people want to do? You don't really mind what you're doing on a day-to-day basis. Then we have interpersonal skills. That's how well you relate to others. And also, how well do you understand other people as well? Do you understand their feelings? Do you understand their emotions? Do you care about your community? Do you care about the environment? And the fourth one is decision making. So solving problems, or do you understand actually what the problem is? And then are you impulsive, or do you take your time to make those decisions? And then the final one, stress management, which we all deal with on a day-to-day basis. Emotional intelligence doesn't make you less stressed, but it does help you to cope with that stress. So we understand moments when we are stressed, how we feel, and then we can change our behavior following on from that. So if we have a look at the difference between EQ and IQ, everyone has heard of IQ, which is innate ability to your innate cognitive ability and intelligence. And it doesn't really change. It's like your personality. We all think we can change our personalities, but we can't really. We are who we are. Whereas emotional intelligence, or EQ, that is trainable. You can understand your emotions and you modify that behavior. Now, first you have an emotional response, and then secondly you have a behavioral response. So your first question I'm going to ask everyone, it's very easy. Imagine where you are now, and Anna, you may want to translate this. Imagine a tiger jumps into the room. How would you feel? So imagine a tiger jumps into the room. How would you feel?
Сможет кто-то ответить? Представьте, что в комнату прыгнул тигр. Как бы вы себя почувствовали?
Fear.
Fear.
Страх.
Fear, yeah.
Shocked.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, it would be a bit of a shock, wouldn't it? Why are we?
Shock, yeah.
Fear, shock, yes.
Exactly. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Those are your emotions.
Very shock. And
then what would you do? What's your behavioral response? What would you do afterwards?
Что бы вы сделали после этого?
I think I'm trying to run.
Yeah.
Very fast.
Yeah, very fast.
So some people might freeze, do nothing, be too scared. You might run. So you're getting a behavioral response afterwards. Now, if you can understand those emotions, you can then train the behavioral response. So now imagine someone who trains tigers, someone who works with tigers every day. They still might feel fear, but they know what they're going to feel. They understand they're going to be scared, so they can train that behavioral response so they don't run away. They will work with that tiger. Let's have a look at work, for example, more realistic example. If you are stressed at work, your emotion is anger, and you might be frustrated with someone as well. And your behavior is you shout at them or you get angry with them. And so if you can understand those emotions first, then you can take a few seconds to wait, and then you can model your behavioral response. You can change your behavior in that way. If you don't, one person gets stressed, which is the emotional response. Second is the anger. Then somebody else gets angry, somebody else gets angry. And in this way, people don't understand what is happening, but you have a toxic atmosphere at work. So if we can identify how we feel and those actions when we feel stressed, then we can model and change that behavior. So the good news is it can be learned, it can be trained. So IQ, you're kind of born with your personality, but EQ, you can train it over time. So let's look at how that works in a company. Here is your company structure. This is a building with a company. Maybe you have one person working here, or maybe you have 10,000. It doesn't matter. At the bottom, you have the employees, middle management, and the CEO or owner at the top. If you are one person, of course, you will do all of those things. If you are 10,000, then you'll have many more layers, many more middle managers as well. But according to the Harvard Business Review, 50% of people leave their jobs because of EQ related issues. So your second question for you, what is a typical problem you have with people at work? A typical problem you have with people at work.
Yes, typical problem. People they too slowly, слишком медленные. Slowly.
They're working slowly. So you're working faster. You don't understand why they're working slowly.
Why you так slowly do you work? Why? I don't understand because why?
Exactly. You can't understand. Yeah. Why they work. Any other problems?
A low level of understanding, maybe.
Yeah. Misunderstandings. You can't understand.
Misunderstanding between the manager and the employees.
Yeah, misunderstanding between the manager and the employees. So they might not understand. Well, it seems like you've been looking at my presentation or something, because the first one, the problem between employees and middle management, misunderstanding. So this can be many different kinds of misunderstandings. We get it with us. We have British and Russian employees, and there's sometimes misunderstandings between middle management and the owner. Lack of empathy. Empathy is understanding how other people feel. So when you're talking about why are they working slowly, I don't understand them. I don't understand why they're working slowly. There's a lack of empathy. And the CEO at the top often focused in on money, on profits, on making money. And those are all problems with emotional intelligence. If you only focus on the money, then the people might make money for you in the short term, but in the long term, then you're not taking care of them and they will leave. As simple as that. So what we have to do instead is think of more of a three-dimensional way of thinking, a 360 degrees. This is your company in the middle, and actually you should be thinking in a more three-dimensional way. And suddenly, oh, there's more in this company than you realize. This company is the people in it are much more complicated. And if you can understand them in a three-dimensional way, then we'll have an increase in the emotional intelligence skills. And you still have the same structure, employees, middle management, and owner. But this time what you have is someone who listens and empathizes and understands someone else. You can then solve problems and take really tough decisions if you're not talking, if you're listening to people. And what does that mean? People work harder. People will do more for you. They will believe in you, and the person at the top, they will increase the revenue and decrease the stress levels. And we've seen it in the companies that I worked for. It really works. The revenue is created by people who believe in each other in a team. So how does it work? Let's think of some practical examples. Here's a problem. You don't know which way to turn. You're turning left or turning right. How can you take a tough decision? So how can we use EQ to take tough decisions? So another question for you. There's some questions for you there. What kind of problems do you have at work? And then how do you solve the process? And did emotions help or not? So if you have misunderstanding or people are working too slowly, how did you solve that problem? So that's another question for you. How did you solve the problems at work?
First, I go to this man and talk with him. Why do you work slowly? What problem?
Yeah.
Yes.
And were you using emotions? Was it emotional?
No emotional.
Angry, or was it calm?
No hungry. No angry. I will be
Calm.
непоколебимый.
Calm, yeah.
Calm. Yes. No, without emotion.
Okay. Anyone else? How do you solve a problem at work? And did the emotions help or not?
Well, I'm talking too, but I can be calm only 2 times. But then I go with emotions.
Yeah. All right. Anyone else?
Yes, I agree with Christine. First without emotion, after with emotion.
Yeah. And then did those emotions, when you were emotional, did they help to solve the problem or not?
No.
Maybe no, but it can be полезный.
Useful.
Yes, sorry, thank you. Useful for myself.
Okay. So taking those.
I think that emotional, it can be a source of problem. Maybe it source of disconnect, not understand with people.
Yeah. So we all have these problems at work. So first of all, we have to understand ourselves. So we have to understand ourselves that why are we getting angry with this person? If we can understand ourselves, then we can start to listen to others as well. And these EQ skills will help with this. So the next time you have a tough decision, you've got to identify what the problem is. So we have to be very flexible to understand what exactly the problem is, then listen to other people and ask for feedback. So this is when you look at all the top businessmen like Warren Buffett or Steve Jobs or Jeff Bezos, all these guys, Steve Jobs famously said, why would I employ these fantastic people at Apple if I'm not going to listen to them and let them take the tough decisions as well? So first listen to them and find out what they think. So instead of saying, why are you so slow? We try to understand what the problem is beforehand. So next time you've got a tough decision, think about what your instincts are and your emotions. Wait, and don't give your opinion. Just listen to what people say. You'll be surprised at how many times you are correct. A terrible idea, and what many bosses do, is go into a meeting and say, this is my opinion. This is what I think. What does everyone else think? And nobody wants to question the boss, or you will crush this creativity because you've already given the answer. Why not go in and say, this is the problem. What do you think the solution is? Let's listen first, and then give your opinion. So it's moving on to using EQ to manage stress. So a nice picture here of a very delightful, stressful situation. So how can we do that? So next question, when have you felt stressed? Can anyone give an example of when they have been stressed?
Кто-нибудь может привести пример того, когда вы чувствовали себя в стрессе?
If I have a lot of work, but I can't do it at all.
There's a lot of work, you can't do it.
Recently, I work as a freelancer also. I'm not only CEO of my company. I'm working as 2D animation, and I have dismissing, yeah? Непонимание.
Misunderstanding.
Yes, misunderstanding with sorry, regisseur.
Director.
Yes, director. And I have a lot of stress because I try to say that I don't understand what he wants me to do, but it's nothing changed. So I just do my work, but he don't like it, and I do a new version of my work and new, and it's all because he can't tell me what he wants. Yeah. So I just stress, but I can't. Don't do my job.
There's some great examples there. Exactly. So if someone doesn't understand you and there's no empathy there, and you don't understand what they want because maybe they can't explain it, it's going to create this stressful situation. And if people say, well, just calm down and do your, we can't, unless you understand someone else and they understand you. You need to use that empathy to manage that stress. Apart from empathy, there are three main subscales in emotional intelligence, which is flexibility, obviously being stress tolerant and optimistic about the future. So if you're flexible, it doesn't mean doing what everyone else wants to do, but it means that when there's a change or there's a new situation, how do you feel in that situation? If there's a sudden change, can you change to to that environment? Or do you prefer just everything to always be the same? It's going to create stress. But if you can have a new situation, and if you have identified, okay, I've got a new situation, that means I'm going to feel stressed. But if I do, I'm going to breathe, I'm going to take some time, I'm going to make a plan, then I will be able to cope with it. Then when that situation happens, you're then in a much better situation. You're prepared to manage that stress as well. So we go into stress tolerance with stress strategies. And so how do you've identified your emotions, but then how do you behave, and how do you want to behave next time? So identify that strategy on how you're going to behave next time. If you manage to remain calm under pressure, or how did you manage to do that as well? So I can remember lots of stressful situations as well in the past where we've used emotional intelligence in this way. So for example, once I had a boss who just disappeared, had like a emotional breakdown. They disappeared physically, disappeared metaphorically as well. They couldn't cope with the pressure, and we had a lot of people panicking as well. And instead of rushing to make the wrong decision, we just took our time, got everyone together, and let everyone say, okay, I'm not going to tell you the answers now. I just want to know how you feel. How do you feel about this? What are you worried about? How are you feeling emotionally, but also how are you feeling at work? And then we managed to solve the problem in that way. And the final thing is on optimism is setting goals. So if you're feeling positive or negative, let's set goals to manage that stress as well. And emotional intelligence we'll talk at the end. There are some clear strategies on what to do. But moving on to this, so this is what we want to create. This is a workplace where people are happy, working together, and using emotional intelligence to improve communication and empathy. So empathy, we know, is understanding other people's feelings. It's not making people happy, doing what they want. No, it's just understanding how they feel, because then it works with negotiating a contract, because you will have an advantage. You'll understand what they want in the negotiation if you can understand how they feel. But also in tough decisions as well. So for example, we had to, a few years ago, we had to fire a lot of people, really tough decision. And if you had no communication with those people before, then and you called them and said, sorry, you're fired, it creates a terrible situation. But if you are communicating all the way along, then it's much easier to be able to give that bad decision as well. You check progress with them, see how they're feeling about the work, see how they're getting on, and point out the areas where they are weakest in, see if they can improve. So communicating with them all the way through. And Bill Gates is another one who believes in this. So we think of Bill Gates, Microsoft, big, amazing businessman, but actually he has 3 simple rules. He doesn't know everything. His first rule is listen first. So he goes into a meeting and listens. Then he identifies other people's feelings, why they're making it, and he doesn't judge them on it. He just identifies why are they saying this? Why are they emotional or not? And in this way, the communication, people think that you're a good listener, then you're communicating much better. Again, the biggest mistake for bosses is that they think they have to go in, give the answer, and everyone will respect them. Now, people will respect you more if you listen. Now this guy, next question, who is this?
Jeff Bezos.
Yes, very good. So often in the news at the moment because he's online. He's on course to be the first trillionaire in the world, and has had some problems at Amazon with not treating their workers quite in the right way. And he's just sent last week, actually I read he set up a empathy system where employees, if they feel they're not being treated kindly, then they have a system direct to the top where they can report on empathetic issues, and believes that you can't be the greatest retailer in the world unless we're also the kindest. He tells a famous story of when he was younger, and he worked out how quickly his grandma was going to die because she smoked too much. And he did all the maths and said, I've worked out this amazing maths. And of course, her grandmother burst into tears and was very sad. and his grandfather told him that it's easy to be clever, it's more difficult to be kind. And lots of people will use this emotional intelligence at the top. So Richard Branson uses it a lot, of course, as well. And if you read into, if you type, if you just Google emotional intelligence and leaders, you will see the strategies that they have as well. Now, the important one, creating this revenue, which people think is the most important, but actually you put it at the end, because I believe it comes at the end. And the better you treat people, the better, the more revenue you will create in the long term, because those people will create the revenue for you. But today we can just talk briefly about 4 different areas in way we can use EQ to increase the revenue. That's hiring, retaining the staff, retaining the customer, and firing. So really typical situations in a company. Now I've carried out in the last 22 years probably about 5 or close to 500 interviews, and I use emotional intelligence a lot in hiring, because I know you hire the wrong person, then you're going to be in trouble. It's going to be a lot of money lost, and people don't realize what it is. Now, in an interview, people often think, how do we know it's the right person or not? So that's my next question for you. So how do we know if you're hiring the right person or not?
Yes, I'm hiring. Анна, что спрашивает, нанимали вы или нет?
Как вы знаете, что вы нанимаете правильного человека, или все-таки этот человек мне подходит? Время интервью, время собеседования, как вы это можете узнать?
Questions? With questions?
Yeah, what kind of questions?
Какие вопросы?
I would go for questions to try and verify they've got the skills needed, but then also to try and check that they're a good cultural fit and they're going to enjoy and be motivated working in the environment I'm hiring them to.
Yeah, so you need questions on whether they can do the job or not, perhaps about their qualifications and the cultural fit as well. But then how do we know that they're going to be a good fit? Well, depending on their answers, it's quite tricky, because often people will interview and then not quite know whether this is the right person or not. And also it depends on what we're hiring for. Do we want someone who's going to be a team player? Do we want someone who's going to be more selfish or be really pushy and work in advertising? Do we want someone who's going to be a potential leader within the group? Or do we need someone to pull the team together as a team player? And so these emotional intelligence questions will help identify that, what sort of person that you're hiring. And it can save a lot of money to the company along the way. As can, of course, retaining staff. So this means how do you keep your staff? Why is it some companies work for them for 10, 20 years, and some of them people leave all of the time? And as we know, 50% of people will leave because of emotional intelligence issues. And so therefore, if you don't understand your staff and how they want to progress with their life and with their jobs as well, then they won't stay. If they do stay, they will be creating that revenue for you. So as Richard Branson, going back to him, as he said, it's the idea that the customer is the most important is completely wrong. What's more important are your staff. Staff are more important than the customers, because they are the ones that are going to be treating the customers. They're the ones that are going to be creating this revenue. And if you get a good team who respects you, then they will create that revenue. They will create that revenue for you. And of course, retaining the customer is important. I think staff are more important, but customer retention plans often don't exist. So in sales and marketing, we have great incentives to sell something, but then where's the incentive to keep that customer? Where at the consultancy, for example, I was just speaking to a student yesterday, even though they're not our clients anymore, but just to see how they are, because we know that if we can retain them in the future, we can create revenue in that way. So by taking care of the customers and retaining them and treating the staff well, then you're automatically creating that revenue in the future. And then, of course, firing, which is very difficult, but sometimes you've got to get rid of the wrong person. But you would have to do this using emotional intelligence. So that means communicating with them beforehand, letting them know there was a problem or what it was, finding out how they are feeling. Maybe they want to leave. Sometimes it's a relief and people don't realize that someone actually wants to leave. And if you're getting rid of the wrong people and hiring the right people, then you're going to be creating revenue in that way, saving yourself money as well in that way. So how do we, going on to the next, as I say, we could talk for 2 hours on each one of these. They're very interesting, but to mention our intelligence assessment. So how does it work practically? Well, employees can take an emotional intelligence test. So you can find out, and I've done this myself as well, and also I give it to other people as my coaching role. And I find out more about myself, about how I view myself, but also how I express myself to others and those interpersonal relationships. And am I good at decision making or stress management? And we do this through a questionnaire. There are 133 questions. And then you have a follow-up interview with the coach to find out which of those 15 areas in the middle there, those 15 subscales, which ones are your strengths and which ones are your weaknesses. And then there are these practical steps and advice. So you have SMART goals which are, instead of saying, I want to get fit or I want to lose weight, well, no, we have a SMART goal which identifies then how you're going to do it, when you're going to do it, what exactly you're going to do. And we work towards these kind of these goals within emotional intelligence. And this is nothing new. You know, these ideas have been around for a long time. What we've done is put them together in these five practical applications within work. And so at the end, we have this picture here of Isaac Newton, which is what we are named after. Newton Bright is named after Isaac Newton. Was a fantastic, not only scientist or physicist, chemist, biologist, and he was an astronomer and a historian, so an incredible academic. And of course, is most famous probably for his laws of gravity. But even he said, like, if I've seen further than others, it's by standing on the shoulders of giants. So this idea is that other people had ideas before him, then he sat on top of them, sat on the shoulders of those giants, and of course put his fantastic ideas together. And that's how we progress within emotional intelligence. We take those ideas and then develop them further. So that's it. Does anybody have any questions on any of those areas? I'll be happy to answer any questions about emotional intelligence in business.
Robin, first of all, I want to say to you, thank you very much for great presentation. I don't have questions. Very interesting. Thank you.
Thank you. And we will have a recording, and also I can send more information on those, because we've only talked to them briefly really of each of those 5 areas. So we can send more information on that if you're interested as well, the 5 areas of emotional intelligence.
У кого-нибудь вопросы есть по поводу того, как Робин помогает с определением эмоционального интеллекта, с развитием эмоционального интеллекта?
Можно на русском, да, задам вопрос?
Быстрее.
Если мы говорим о фрилансерах, например, там довольно сложно иногда коммуницировать по понятным причинам, и с ними тоже надо как-то, если, например, они работают медленно, и ты хочешь, чтобы они это быстрее делали, то есть так или иначе ты все равно будешь злиться в какой-то момент. И это фрилансеры, они постоянные рабочие, то есть их можно увольнять, в принципе, довольно, или стоит даже с ними как-то договариваться.
То есть вопрос, стоит ли их сразу увольнять или с ними договариваться, работать, да, над своим эмоциональным интеллектом и вообще с ними. Правильно я поняла?
Да, да. Ну, не то чтобы, конечно, сразу, то есть 2-3 раза ты им, да, скажешь, может быть, даже поймешь, но если это происходит на постоянной основе, то есть ли смысл с ними договариваться, или это просто, ну, уже человек такой, и он не будет работать по-другому, и нет смысла с ним разговаривать.
Okay, Robin, Christina asked about the freelancers. So she's working with freelancers, and she asks whether it makes sense to work on emotional intelligence, to work with them, or maybe to fire them, because she can tell them 1 or 2 times what to do, or she could try to solve the problems, but after that, they do not understand her. So they're not permanent workers, and maybe it is easier to fire them, not to work.
Sure. The first of all, Chris, I'd like to say your answer to the tiger was fantastic. What would you do if a tiger came in? You said, call to the zoo. I think it's the first time I've ever heard anyone say call to the, everyone says scream, run, shout, freeze. No. So I think first of all, your stress tolerance levels are very high, because you would just, the tiger comes in, right, I will call the zoo. Very good. Now, in answer to your question, the first step is to do it for yourself. I think dealing with other people, first of all, you need to understand yourself. And so I did the first step for me was to do an emotional intelligence test for myself. And this way I can understand how good I was at expressing my emotions to other people. So maybe I wasn't assertive enough, or maybe I was. And so once you understand yourself, let me start my video. So once you understand yourself, maybe the problem is that you can't express it, maybe you're not assertive, or maybe the problem is the other person who's not listening. So first of all, we've got to understand ourselves as well. And I think that it's quite a personal test, but you do understand a lot more about yourself. Then working with others, well, if they're freelancers, once you understand yourself, then you'll be able to understand them. So the questions that we use, the empathetic questions. So for example, if they haven't done something, we say, look, I can see that it's difficult for you. I can see that you haven't managed to do that. So we start with the fact, it's all facts, but I can see that you haven't, it must be really difficult for you that you haven't done this. And as soon as we start with an empathetic tone, so these kind of phrases, I can write them in there, like I can see. Or is there anything stopping you getting this work done? Or what can I do to help you to get this work done? It will help you understand whether to fire them or not. If they suddenly give you the answer for it and there's a good reason, then you understand that you might be able to work together. But if they are not, and if they're not doing their job and they don't want to do their job, and they don't want to listen to you, then we sometimes need to not work with those people anymore. And if they're freelancers, unfortunately, but give them a chance to understand why. So these questions, they're truthful. I can see this must be difficult for you, or you haven't delivered on what you said. Can I help? So these are more empathetic ways of people will be more likely to tell you what the problem is. But yeah, first understand yourself, then understand others, and then make the decision whether to work with them or not.
Thank you, Robin, for answering. And спасибо, Аня, за перевод.
Robin, I have one small question. I'm interested in your way. How do you come to this topic? How did you start to studying something about emotional intelligence?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's very interesting. It kind of found me. So I didn't know what emotional intelligence was. So 20 years ago, I didn't know what it was. I knew that it was important to listen to people. I didn't have any fantastic qualifications or go to a great school or have an MBA or these things, but I found success by listening to people. Sometimes I was perhaps shy as well when I was starting out as a manager, sort of 17 years ago. So I listened to people, I let them talk, and suddenly I managed to understand what the problems were. And so I didn't know it was emotional intelligence, but I had this feeling that this was the right thing to do. This was morally the right thing to do. And then during the work, then when I found out what emotional intelligence was, I read a lot of books on it as well before I was qualified. So I can send the links for those books as well. Emotional Intelligence in Business. They're not new ideas, but that way I understood what emotional intelligence was, and then I got qualified. So it found me, and then I found the way forward in that way.
Yeah, very interesting. And what do you do before you start to learn and speaking about emotional intelligence?
So I started as a teacher. So 22 years ago, I started as a teacher. So I think you need emotional intelligence skills as well, especially I worked with students of foreign language as well. So teaching students of a foreign language. So you need to listen to them, and you need to let them talk because they can practice their English as well. And then in 2005, I moved into the education management, so managing the teachers, and then I managed summer schools as well, which I did in the UK. And from then on, moved into education management and also negotiating these business contracts as well from them.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Hello, Natalia.
Hi, Robin. First of all, thank you for interesting presentation. And for me, I want to know how I can develop my emotional intelligence first step, because for me, to give positive feedback is too difficult. More simple is to give negative feedback.
Yeah.
And I know it's a problem between relationship between me and my colleagues.
Yeah, it can be very difficult to give. People say give constructive feedback, but then the emotions will take over. And emotions, we can't control them always. We can't control. What we can control is the behavior after those emotions. It's as simple as if somebody bangs the door. If you hit the door hard, you jump like this. It's an automatic emotion you have. You can't control it, but you can control the behavior afterwards. So you can say, okay, if somebody bangs that door, maybe I will jump, but afterwards I'll understand because maybe the wind's blowing. It's not a ghost. Everything will be fine. So you can model that behavior afterwards. So you can start. We always do the emotional intelligence test ourselves to understand more about ourselves, because it gives you really is a 20-page report, detailed feedback on yourself. Then you can start to understand more about your specific situation. So we say, okay, if you give feedback, how do you feel when you give that feedback? Why you say it's difficult, but give some examples of why it is difficult, and also some examples of your own feelings. Do you feel anger or frustration or you're embarrassed? So we understand those emotions first, and then we work out the plan. So you have a plan. You say, okay, next time I give feedback, I'm going to feel embarrassed. I'm going to feel stressed. I will do this, this, and this. So we have a plan of your behavior afterwards. Yeah.
Christina wrote, it's problem of all Russians to give positive feedback at work.
So understand it, working British and Russian and Ukrainian and Belarusian, it's very interesting how people will talk. Russians are sometimes famous, for giving quite hard feedback, whereas the British don't want to. We do in Britain, sometimes we don't want to offend people as well, but as long as you're, everyone can listen to everyone else. This is why we have 2 ears and 1 mouth, because listening is more important than speaking. And if you listen to someone first, it's more likely to be able to give positive feedback afterwards.
Thanks a lot, Robin. And I have a question.
Good. Alessia.
Oh, thanks a lot for your presentation. It was very interesting and useful. And one question is, I understand, so you must be capable of monitoring your own emotions first, right?
Yeah.
But do you think is it useful to create the situation just deliberately for the employees, just to understand how they behave in that or the stressful situation? What do you think?
I think it's not to create it deliberately, but to make, if things are happening all the time, so if you have a situation, I can't give feedback positively, or I feel stressed, then it's probably happening lots of times. Yeah? It might happen every day or every week or every month. So when it does happen, you don't need to create it because it's being created by itself. What you need to do is to write down the emotions that you're feeling about why you were angry, or why you were upset, or why you were shy or ashamed. All of these difficult, especially for men sometimes, to talk about these emotions. But if you don't understand the emotions, you won't be able to change your behavior. So write down how you feel, what the situation was, how you felt, then the behavior, what you did, and how your behavior affected someone else and what they did. And then you will have, you'll be able to look at that situation to see if you want to change or not.
I see. Thanks. Thank you.
Any more questions?
I have one question, but it's not about this theme. How can I contact maybe for partnership?
Sure. Well, we'll send you we have your email address when you signed up, so we'll send you all the information as well. I'll send you some list of the books that might be of interest to you as well in business, both from businessmen themselves, the ones that they've written it, and also specifically on emotional intelligence as well, because they're very useful to read. And then we'll send you details on the assessment, and whether see if you want to take the assessment, and the feedback as well that we have afterwards, the interview afterwards.
Аня, можно попросить перевод? Не совсем поняла ответ.
После презентации мы каждому вышлем и запись презентации. Робин поделится списком книг. Соответственно, мы обменяемся таким образом контактами, мы можем связываться потом по каким-то вопросам, которые вас будут интересовать.
Все, да, поняла. Спасибо большое.
Анна, я в описании под видео, давайте вот на YouTube-канале под видео в описании я оставлю все, что нужно, все, что попросите, в том числе контакты на все хозяйство. На YouTube-канале все будет. Ну и в бизнес-клуб я тоже скину, Кристина.
Да, супер.
Artem said
все
that
будет.
he will share our contacts and our services after below the YouTube video. So, and he will send all the information to the club members.
Fantastic.
No problem.
Well, hopefully next time we really want to come to Belarus, and we want to come to Russia as well. Usually I spend my time traveling between the UK and Spain and Russia. So hopefully next time we'll speak in person. We'll have the event in person, much more fun.
Okay.
Да, окей.
Fantastic. Well, thank you. Thank you everyone for attending, and we'll send you all the details. You have my email as well, so any other questions that you want, I will be happy to answer.
Thanks,
Thank you, Robin.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank
Bye
you,
bye.
everyone.
Thanks.
Bye bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.